Back in the day, when Jesus was riding a dinosaur around the freshly built Parthenon, the pyramids were just a glint in the ZX Spectrum's eye, and we were all saying words like fresh, groovy, and forsooth nay, the Zelda timeline was a complete mystery. All we had were explicitly contradictory developer statements, backstories that never added up, and a couple of forums on which we'd log on after a hard day's school and abuse strangers on the internet for not having the exact same interpretation of a particular adult timeline-y coloured piece of grass found in Kakariko Village. During this time, when I was a young tadpole, coming up with revolutionary, groundbreaking theories that other people kept taking credit for, I also happened to be on completely the wrong side of every timeline debate ever. There's definitely no split timeline, said I. That's not how time travel was established to work in Ocarina of Time. Every game therefore happens on one linear timeline. Wrong, said the developers. There's a split for adult and child endings, you idiot. Fine, said I, bewildered but determined. If there's a split and a new Hyrule founded, that shows there's intent for existing Hyrule games to take place there. The Minish Cap's nascent Hyrule fits perfectly there without ruining the sanctity of Ocarina as the origin of Link's Kokiri tunic. No, said the developers, and have another game even before that one just for lols. Now there's 3 origins. Okay, said I, bewildered but not unencouraged. If the classic games have to go on the same arc, then, well, I guess they either go on the child timeline in the old Hyrule to make sense of the Master Sword, or on the adult timeline to make sense of the Sealing Sages and the town names, right? F*** off, said the developers. There's a third split, you idiot. Why didn't you realise when we'd given you absolutely no clues of this at all? Whatever, said I, confused but baffled. But the Sleeping Zelda, the first story, must happen pre-split then, for there to be constant Zeldas in every line, and for it to make any sense, Tetra's name changes to Zelda in the Wind Waker, otherwise she'd just be Princess Tetra the First. Oh, for fuck's sake. So yeah, the Historia timeline and its later update/alternate in the encyclopedia seem to go out of their way to make no sense. All the old arguments about the state of Ganon or the Triforce were proven to be completely meaningless, as the developers just stick never-before-mentioned events between the games they care about, so any of them can go anywhere they want. But then came something of a lifeline in the latest game, Breath of the Wild. Sort of the opposite of Skyward Sword, it was set so far into the future and had so many references to every timeline that suddenly the community was abuzz again with where it was best. Were the references to the Master Sword being steeped in twilight more important than the Rito, Koroks and Rock Salt? How was Hylia, forgotten for thousands of years, suddenly back in full force of worship? Is the Tunic of the Wilds and the thematic links to the very first game just homage, or indicative of its history? Suddenly we had a game to discuss again. Until they gave us its placement at the end. Not at the end of the adult timeline, or the child, or the downfall, the end of all things. So far into the future, and with references to so many timeline cues from so many other games, this game brings the timelines together in a way no one anticipated, which clearly means teenage me was right all along and the timeline was always linear. Actually though, it does raise one question. At the end of all the timelines, what does this mean in practice? I've established 3 distinct ways this can be interpreted, and this video will discuss them in the order which I deem from least likely to most likely. So here is Merging the Timelines, the video. A popular option online is that Breath of the Wild represents a literal merging of the 3 timelines, that some magical entity or event took the scattered dimensions and closed the rifts between, bringing the various tributaries and streams into the same river once more. Though this is hard to comprehend in our mortal minds, Zelda is a fantasy series, with gods and demons, in which we know alternate universes exist, and gods exist, beyond them all. In this world, where it is possible to split time, it is perfectly feasible for some divine force to rejoin it. This is far from unheard of in fantasy. Another modern epic adventure RPG series, The Elder Scrolls, features this mechanic heavily, so much so they even have their own in-universe name for it, a Dragon Break. Because there is a timeline to the Elder Scrolls series, but because each game relies so heavily on the concept of personal choice changing the playthrough in the very world, these breaks is how the series gets the continuity back on track before the next game. The eponymous dragon is Akatosh, the dragon god of time, and it is theorised he is the one who oversees the phenomena. For example, looking at the most recent and commercially successful release, Skyrim, in this game you have a number of absolutely contradictory choices. Side with the Stormcloaks and assassinate the Emperor, or side with the Empire and bring Ulfric to his just deserts. Kill Pathurnax to appease the Blades, or refuse and be denied access to their skills forever. Side with the vampires and ensure a bright, darker future for your people, or join the Dawnguard and help the werewolves run the vampires out of Skyrim forever. The next game, Elder Scrolls 6, has been announced, and this game will have to take place in the future caused by your and every other player's actions in Skyrim. All the possible permutations of a playthrough happened and didn't happen all at once. History books will have to tell tales of how Ulfric was both successful and defeated, how Pathurnax lives and also was slain, etc., etc., in-universe. These events take the form of a continent-wide Mandela effect. historians disagreeing about what happened, some going mad trying to make sense of it all. Only the most supernatural and powerful mortals are able to comprehend it in its entirety, such as the Tribunal. Most people simply don't care. The past happened and the present is happening. They just make do with the now. Meanwhile, the scholars argue to high harrenhal about whether dragon breaks even exist or not. Even more recently, a similar concept was explored in Avengers Endgame. There, the Ancient One explains to the time-travelling Hulk how the stream of time works. Using the Time Stone itself, as shown in Infinity War and Doctor Strange, just undoes and rewrites time. Utilising the quantum realm, however, it is possible to change the past in such a way that stream could split. The Ancient One explains that the Infinity Stones are the primordial magic keeping the universe together, and when one is removed, it creates a branched reality as time becomes more delicate. Banner postulates, however, that returning the stone to the timeline would re-establish the order of things, and the world would return to where it should be. This meaning that the universe in which the stones were never removed from time, and the universe in which they were, are rejoined, and the stream becomes whole again. The Ancient One agrees, providing that the stones are in fact returned, which of course they are by Cap, a dragon break in all but name. So this is one option. It explains the coexistence of the Rito and the Zora. The Zora both evolved into the Rito, and didn't. Ganon both was killed, and wasn't, and was reincarnated, and wasn't. Varmedo was indeed named for Medley in the adult timeline, and the Master Sword was indeed steeped in twilight in the child. And I guess the downfall happened too, whatever. The wounds in time were healed by external divine power. But who could that power be? There is no World Dragon or Infinity Stones in Zelda. There is, however, the oft-quoted and never yet revealed Goddess of Time. Theorised by some to be Nehru, others to be Hylia, or even Demise is said to have conquered time itself and lived beyond its limitations. Whoever it might be, there certainly are entities in the Zelda universe who could have brought the dissipated streams of time together again. So that's option 1. But it's still the least likely of the 3 distinct possibilities I've come up with, so on to number 2. Option 2, entropy, or the inevitable conclusion. Option 2 is that the events of Breath of the Wild is just what absolutely always had to have happened, no matter what twists and turns were made along the way. This was always the endgame. Give the adult timeline 10,000 years, and Breath of the Wild happens. Give the child timeline 10,000 years, and Breath of the Wild happens. Give the downfall timeline 10,000 years, and Breath of the Wild happens. It's inevitable. It happens, independently and under each universe's own conditions, thrice, once in each. This may seem at first horrendously unlikely. In fiction, we're used to being told that the smallest change in the present has uncountable unique impacts on the future, so even in the world of Zelda, can we really believe that such a sprawling and complicated epic as Breath of the Wild could happen under 3 completely different histories, dimensions apart? Well, it's not as unlikely as it first seems. In fact, it can be explained both by in-universe magic and, to an extent, real-world science. In-universe, destiny, fate and prophecy are commonplace. Indeed, Zelda herself is called the Princess of Destiny. Malign portents are foreseen and curses placed that are guaranteed for millennia. Indeed, in many games, the attempt to circumvent a prophecy, to change or fix the potential future, often end up just causing that future anyway. Zelda prophesies the doom of Hyrule, and in Link's effort to prevent it, lets Ganon into the Sacred Realm and causes that very doom. Demise was said to be defeated by an ancient hero, and in Girahim's attempt to revive him, accidentally brought Link back to the beginning of the world to be that same hero and defeat him throughout time. At the end of Ocarina, going by the original series, Link was supposed to fail and Ganon destroy Hyrule into the Dark World, but he succeeded, and in return there was created 2 timelines. Well, and in one, his absence caused Ganon's return and destruction of Hyrule into the Great Sea, and the infamous divine prank that caused Ganon to get the Triforce anyway and bring destruction to Hyrule by Twilight. It seems that there is no avoiding fate in the Zelda universe. If Breath of the Wild is the end, written and prophesied millennia ago by the gods, it makes perfect sense that whatever permutations the world might go through, this is the destination. Scientifically, this is similar to the concept of entropy, the name given to the state of being everything in the universe is desperately trying to reach, a complete lack of order and energy, an unconscious desire for oneness with everything in a state of irredeemable chaos. This is often illustrated by the idea of sandcastles on the beach. Build as high as you like, eventually it will all just be sand again. If it's too wet, it gets washed away to sand. Too dry, crumbles to sand. Too windy, blows over. Not windy enough, gets too hot and dries, see point 1. Entropy is the idea that predicts the eventual heat death of the universe, all energy used up, nothing left but nothing. It's not really the same thing, more a case of self-organising systems than true entropy, but this illustrates the universe's unconscious need for a stable state, plus it's always an excuse to show this video. A dozen metronomes all set off at different times, desperate to synchronise due to the shared movement of the Earth. The moving platform just speeds up the process. The movement of the Earth's crust would be movement enough if given enough time. So that's option 2. It's at the end of the downfall, adult and child timelines all independently. But it's only my second place pick. The first is a theory which was popular amongst many theorists even in my old days. and it's one featured in the title of the series itself. Option 3. Legends. The Legends theory was an interesting theory back in the day, almost because of how uninteresting it was. It stated that the common themes and refrains in the games, the long dead evil being resurrected, 6 or 7 sages, magic sealing swords, etc., they're common because they're all retellings of the same events. Each game is simply the retelling of an old event, and elements are shared between stories, embellished by new storytellers, and over time the legends evolve and change. For each game in the series, the only one that is true and accurate is the one you're currently playing. All the others are just long-lost history and hearsay. This is why in The Wind Waker the hero of time was able to leave the Master Sword, break the Triforce of Courage up into 8 pieces, then ride away on his horse as shown in the backstory of The Wind Waker, when in-game Ocarina there's no chance for this to happen at all, Link being sent straight back home. It explains why the story of Tingle, who helped the hero of time in the child timeline, appears in The Wind Waker, yet also portraits of the adult timeline 6 sages. By the time of the Great Sea, the events of Ocarina of Time are just what it says on the tin. Legends. It doesn't matter that the story of the imprisoning war doesn't match up with Ocarina of Time, because it's just a legend. It doesn't matter that Ganon was defeated in A Link to the Past and the Triforce was reformed, only for it to be magically split again and Ganon resealed in A Link Between Worlds with nothing important happening in between. They're just legends. In the age of A Link Between Worlds, people tell the legend of A Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time, and over time these get confused, and elements of each are based on truth leading to whatever is happening now. The backstory of Adventure of Link, the first Zelda who explains why all princesses are Zelda, that's based on something that probably happened a long time ago to affect all timelines, but history has moved, and the legend now says it was relatively recently, and she still sleeps somewhere in Hyrule, which is important for that game, because it's happening, you're playing it, but it has no effect on anything else, so it's a minor point in their myths. The Rito in The Wind Waker tells stories of how they're descended from the Zora, whereas the Rito in Breath of the Wild don't tell that story anymore. The theory was even hinted at in Twilight Princess with the historian Shad, explaining that historians aren't in agreement about who created Hyrule, the gods or the Yucca, a contradictory creation myth. Back in the day, this theory didn't quite work. If nothing else, it's lazy and a bit of a cheat. Why doesn't this placement fit? Oh, because of unreliable narrators and misremembered histories. Basically, using the Legends theory, you could place any game anywhere. But in the post-Breath of the Wild world, that kind of seems the point. You believe the Minish Cap works best as an early tale of New Hyrule from Spirit Tracks? Go for it. You believe that the Great Flood never happened and Ganondorf was defeated in single combat in the Age of Twilight? That's fine too. It's all just the legends of the past performing a hot pot of history mixed with hearsay and tradition. Breath of the Wild puts us in the shoes of the Hylians of the game. Some tell stories of the Great Flood, others stories of Ganon's reincarnation, others tell stories of Hyrule's Golden Age, and it doesn't matter what's true and what isn't. It is what it is, a legend. This is supported by Masterworks and the game itself, with the age before the first calamity, in which all previous games occurred, being called the Age of Myth, being set so far in the future, not the usual nondescript 100 years later place marker we've seen in The Wind Waker or Spirit Tracks. This is 10,000 years after even the latest Zelda game. Most history has been forgotten. That which exists is bitty and often contradictory, but by this point it doesn't matter. In many ways, this most represents how our own world works. The further into the present we get, the better technologies we have to understand how the past probably works. In spite of that, there are still so many beliefs that abound. It may seem strange within the Zelda universe to accept that there is a world where such a cataclysmic event as the Great Flood or the Wind Waker just doesn't matter whether it happened or not, but that's exactly where we are now. Some religions absolutely believe in a worldwide flood that wiped out almost all life. Others believe it was just a Mediterranean flood. Others believe it didn't happen at all. In any of these cases, it doesn't change where we are now. Some people believe the world was created by a deity more recently than the backstory of Breath of the Wild. Others believe it was created by a deity but over a much longer period. Others don't believe there was a deity at all. And all coexist and believe their beliefs independently. And each one probably thinks the other is silly and ignoring evidence of their own beliefs. Such is Breath of the Wild. Maybe the flood did happen. Maybe Link lost against Ganon. Maybe Malladus existed. Maybe we were all created by the gods, or maybe we were created by Sky People, or maybe being created by Sky People is just history and Chinese whispers changing the story of the people of Skyloft settling in Hyrule. Maybe Hylia exists. Maybe there's a perfectly scientific explanation as to why praying at her statues helps. Maybe, like Earth, eventually Sheikah technology will be so advanced they will be able to decipher the true history. But I'll bet, like Earth, it won't matter. People will believe what they believe. And the variety of this is what makes Earth, and Hyrule, so interesting. So that's where my money is. How about you? Do you think in Breath of the Wild we're seeing the result of a divine healing of time? Or just the inevitable endpoint where the battle between Hylia and Demise was always leading? Or do you agree with me that Breath of the Wild has rendered all past games exactly what their titles claim? Legends. Sound off in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Hello, Zora here. This is the bit at the end of the video where I tell you to like and subscribe and all that stuff, so please like and subscribe. I've only just started this channel, but looking to get more videos out as soon as possible to get a decent back catalogue, and the more likes there are, the more videos I'll make. Yeah, usual stuff. Do 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 do.